All right, so since Satan is no longer in heaven, he doesn't have the same job that he used to have. So what does he do now? Is he collect unemployment?
Lies, manipulates, looking to gather souls.
Kill, steal, destroy.
His mantra is kill, steal, and destroy. That pretty much covers everything that he and his demons do. Kill, steal, and destroy. Now, I had a conversation with a man not too long ago. My wife and I had a conversation with this man who had a very dark past, who is now serving Christ with his whole heart. And some of the things that he talked about were just incredible as far as the things that he remembers happening to him. And he can now recognize demonic influence in his life. He can recognize when the demons did this and did that. There was an instance where he was partying and there was some stuff going on and went on for 12 hours. He remembers hour 1 and hour 12. He doesn't remember what happened in between. He totally just, and at the time he didn't remember. He's just like, wow, what do you mean 12 hours? Look at the time, it's only been an hour. There were really strange things that happened, and this is an extreme. This isn't what most demonic oppression is, but when somebody gets in deeper and deeper and deeper, so if people get into drugs and meth and things get deeper and deeper and deeper, or they get into sin, they just a life of sin and just get deeper and deeper and deeper, it just gives free rein to a lot of stuff that demons do. He saw instances of demons around him. He had witches that followed him around and were casting spells on him. A lot of different stuff. It was kind of interesting to me, and we'll talk about the a familiar spirit later. But he said he could walk around where he lived, and he could look down at the ground, and he would see like a skull, what looked like a skull. And he said he would go dig it up. When he did, he would find like whatever the remnants of a spell were, like some hair from a hairbrush, say, from his hair, whatever, and maybe I don't know what all kinds of crazy things that the witches were using, but they were actually putting spells. And he found out later that they were trying to put certain demonic spirits on him. One of them they wanted to attach to him was the spirit of divination, which is a familiar spirit. And he said that's when they watched him, and that's when they knew he could go find those and he could dig them up like that. And he said he would take them and put things in the shape of a cross. He said he wasn't really saved at the time, but he knew enough that the Lord's Prayer kind of people that are like, oh, something bad's happening, our Father who art in heaven, he was like that. So he said, I was just changing it to crosses, but he said they were watching me and they knew that I now had a familiar spirit. I had a spirit of divination because I could find that. So they knew what they had been trying to put on him was now on him and attached to him. So there's a story I'll just back up a little bit. How many of you have ever heard of psychics?
Mm-hmm.
And they can tell the future, or they can tell the past, they can tell this and they can tell that. How many people, just raise your hand if you think it's a possibility that they can really do that.
Some,
you think
yes.
it's a possibility?
Yes.
Some.
They used to call them prophets.
Okay. Now, obviously, there are tricks to that game because I've read some of the stuff where you can do something called cold reading, and you can fool people into basically they're feeding you the information and they don't know it, and you feed it back to them. They're like, I didn't tell you that. Oh wow, this is amazing. So if you're just a con artist, you can get away with that. But there are truly those out there who really can tell things that they shouldn't know.
Yes.
And the way they can do it is because they have a spirit inside them called a familiar spirit, or a spirit of divination. An example would be when Paul was ministering and the girl kept following him. The fortune teller girl kept following him. She kept yelling out, you guys are servants of God, and kept going on and on and on. Finally, after several days, he'd had enough, and he turned around and he cast that spirit out of her. The reason we know that was real was because as soon as the spirit was out of her, the people got mad. The reason they got mad was because she couldn't tell fortunes anymore. She wasn't accurate because she didn't have any inside knowledge. So if you wanted to do an act, let's say you're doing a magic act, you could hide a little microphone in your ear, or not a microphone, a little speaker in your ear, and have somebody in the audience or somebody out back that sees something you can't, telling you, giving you inside information. And if you did that, then you could be blindfolded and you could say, how many fingers? Hold up as many fingers as you want. They could hold up 3 fingers. And you say, you're holding up 3 fingers. You say, how did you know that? You're blindfolded. Well, if you have someone feeding you information, that's exactly how familiar spirits can work. They can do that. So how is that anything to do with killing, stealing, or destroying? Why would they want to play that game? What would be the advantage if you were Satan or if you were in the kingdom of darkness? Why would you want to play that game? There's got to be something to be gained from it. Let's take another example. If you watch a show where, say, somebody's been murdered, particularly if it was someone's child, and they can't find the body and they don't know where they're at, and they call in a psychic and the psychic says, I'm seeing a dirt road and there's an elm tree, and they describe it, and then they go and find the body. What did that just do to the mother of that child? What just clicked with her when the psychic told them where the girl was, or the body of the kid, and they went and found it? Then all of a sudden, what happens in her mind?
Hope that the child's still alive.
No.
Maybe no.
I mean, after they find the dead body,
Oh.
child's body. Sorry.
Well, trust in that
Right.
situation.
Right. So they're getting you to trust in something other than God.
Right.
And so now your trust isn't in the Lord, and your interest is piqued in this, right? So now you go, I didn't know this stuff was real, and you start getting into it, and the next thing you know, you're away from God. You did just like Israel, you were following God, and all of a sudden now you're following false gods. So they don't do anything without a reason. So, I've heard people say, well, that can't be a demon, because a demon wouldn't want them to find their child and have peace now that they get the remains of their child and bury him and all that. Yeah, they would. It's like a drug dealer. He's going to take a little loss. He's going to lose a little bit of money by giving you a little bit of drugs at the beginning, but he knows it's going to pay big dividends down the line, right? So Satan doesn't mind at all. When people do all sorts of things, when they conjure things, Ouija boards and ghosts and all sorts of things, when they do that, often they see things that are just really nice and harmless, right? Or so they think. Oh, well, it was just a sweet old couple that used to live in this house. No. There are no real ghosts. So if you see what you think is a ghost, it's not going to be an angel, because angels don't do that, but demons do. They'll masquerade as other things to get you to believe.
And we cannot have no other God before him.
Exactly. Correct. That's exactly right. So they're out there and they're active in all sorts of different ways. We'll get on later on to how some stuff that's maybe more close to home, because most people sitting in here are probably saying, yeah, but I don't mess with Ouija boards. I don't have seances, and that's great. That's the way it should be. Don't do that. But you say, so I'm kind of immune from all of that, right? No. There's a whole lot of stuff that can go on behind the scenes, and it can have an effect on you, and it can have an effect all the way down into your life in ways you don't even really know. I'm going to read a little thing to you that I wrote called Satan's Unwelcome Guests. So you got to back up and remember, the first time we hear about Satan, not Lucifer, but when he's called Satan, is in the Garden of Eden, right? So it would sort of give us the idea that he probably was there before Adam and Eve were there. So he's been cast down to the earth, and life's good, right? It's all party for him and his underlings, because they've got the whole earth all to themselves. Then one day, all of a sudden, God says, you know what? I'm going to create somebody to fellowship with, and he's going to be called man. And he creates a man, he calls him Adam, and then he takes a rib from Adam and creates Eve so she can be a helpmate for him. So now all of a sudden, and I'm thinking about, Connie just recently got another dog, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, Houdini's the one that's been there?
Yeah.
How did Houdini react when that new dog came in the house? It had been his house for a long time. Was it?
Kind of looked at her like, what have you done?
Was he thrilled? Was like,
Not
that's
really.
good. Not too thrilled, right?
No.
Okay. So you can imagine Satan probably wasn't that thrilled when somebody drops in. Not only was that the case, what if Connie picks up this little dog and just loves on it all the time?
Jealousy.
And be a little jealous, like,
Oh, there's jealousy.
So you can just imagine what Satan was thinking and how infuriated he was when all of a sudden God, he's like, you know what, I may not be in heaven anymore, but at least I've got this place to myself and for all my friends, whatever. And then all of a sudden, man appears. Not just another inhabitant, but somebody who came specifically created by God to fellowship with God. Because Satan, if you'll remember, Lucifer was created, he was created to serve God. But man was not created to serve God in the beginning. Man was created to have a close, intimate, family-style relationship with God. In a word, man was more special in God's eyes than were the angels. So now the angel formerly known as Lucifer had been evicted from his original home, and now God's favorites had just arrived in the location where he was banished. Talk about adding insult to injury. Don't get me wrong, Satan deserves this and a whole lot more, but I'm just trying to paint a picture here of the situation. So man sort of stepped right in it, so to speak. Stepped right into the middle of something he wasn't ready for necessarily. He had no idea that Satan existed. He didn't know. All he knew was, we enjoy, I walk in the morning, in the cool of the morning, I talk to God, life is good, got this wonderful garden. That's all he knew. And I only have how many rules I have to obey? Most people get this wrong. See how many you can. It's not one. There's actually two. Can you think of what the second one was? You know what the first one was. Don't eat from the tree of good knowledge of good and evil, right?
Right.
Why did they get kicked out immediately? Why did, as soon as they sinned, God's like, get them out now. And he put an angel, a cherub, that cherubim that was facing all four ways to protect, so nobody would go in the Garden of Eden. Why was it? Had something to do with the other rule.
Couldn't be in his presence anymore.
No?
Tree of life.
Couldn't be in the garden.
Tree of life.
Right.
He said, don't eat from the tree of life, and don't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You ever think about that? What if they would have eaten from the tree of life first, and then the other one? We'd be in a mess. Because they would have lived forever, and they would have been bad. And broken away from God. So that would have been a terrible, terrible thing. So once they realized good and evil, then God's like, get them out before they go to the tree of life and say, we're gonna live forever. I mean, who wouldn't? I mean, if you could peddle something to the public and said, I'll sell you this for $1,000, all you have to do is eat this thing and you're gonna live forever. Oh man, they'd be like running you down. You'd be trampled in the onslaught. So it was important that they got out of there. So those are the two rules they have. Don't eat of that tree, don't eat of that tree. So they ate the one tree and moved on, or moved out. So what did he really accomplish there? What did Satan accomplish? First of all, he was jealous. He didn't want man to be there in the first place. And he really didn't like it because he was the teacher's pet, or God's pet, so to speak. So what did he do that was so harmful? It hurt God and it hurt man.
Separated them.
He separated them. And he did it by making them do something. He didn't make them do it. He tempted them, like Chris tempted me to throw the apple at the car. Nobody forced me to. I could have said, you know what? That's not a good idea. I shouldn't have done that. And probably if I was married to Portia at the time, I would have been like, oh no, I can't do that. So, by their choice. So you've heard, if you give someone enough rope, they'll hang themselves. That's kind of what he did. He gave them the rope, let them wrap it around them, and he jerked it tight, and they hung themselves. So unfortunately, we're suffering for that right now. Number one thing is disease and sickness. We get that because of the curse from the garden. There's a chance that they probably would have lived forever in the Garden of Eden, but not now. So that's why we have disease. That's why we have, most of our diseases come from cancers and stuff, come from mutations in our cells, mutations in our DNA. And that, I believe we had perfect DNA until that point. And from that point on, it started degrading little by little by little by little. Probably the longer mankind goes on, thousands and thousands of years, the worse our health will get, the worse and the worse it'll get. But that's my science background coming out, so sorry to bore you there. All right, so Satan came up with this plan. He said, I'm going to separate God, and that's going to hurt from man. It's going to hurt man, it's going to hurt God. So God, not to be outdone, said, okay, you won this time, but I already have a plan. I'm going to win. And what was his plan?
Christ.
Jesus.
Jesus. He was going to send Jesus. How do we know that he already had the plan clear back in the Garden of Eden? There was a prophecy in Genesis. Do you remember what it was?
The man that crushes.
He said, your seed, meaning Jesus, would, or the seed of man, the seed of man would crush the head of the serpent. The head of the serpent would do what to the heel of the...
Bruise it.
It would bruise the heel. So who's getting the better end of the deal there? Would you rather be killed, or would you rather just have a bruise on your heel? Probably rather have a bruise on your heel. So what was the bruise? How did Satan bruise Jesus' heel? What do you think that was a prophecy of?
Crucifixion.
What?
Crucifixion.
Right. He took his life and he made him suffer. Took his life in a very difficult way. That was a death sentence at the time, and it wasn't like we have now, like where they, shoot some drugs into you and you fall asleep and then you don't wake up. Well, it wasn't like that. Crucifixion was, it was gory and awful way to go. So, I don't know for sure, but I got a feeling that Satan probably thought that he had won at that point. No way of really knowing that I know of. But I think he was sorely mistaken and figured it out in pretty short order. So can you imagine? I can't imagine. I know Satan was on the earth, so I don't know where he was when Jesus came back out of the grave. But can you imagine the look on his face when he saw the empty tomb? He was like, uh-oh. I was always taught as a kid, if you get a wasp in the house and you have a fly swatter, don't hit it unless you're going to be able to kill it. Because if you hit it, you're just going to make it mad. When I was in college, I had a guy in my dorm room, and he was a big lineman. He was about, I don't know how much big he was. He was like twice my size. And he never smiled. He was scary. And he would go up to people. If anybody messed with him, he'd just look him dead in the eye and never smile. And he'd say, you want to hit me? Go ahead. But I'm going to tell you one thing. If you hit me, you better kill me. You better kill me. Because if not, I'm going to get back up and I'm going to wipe up the floor with you. And then we all went and changed our clothes after that. At least I did it. Twice my size and much meaner. So, I don't even know why I thought that was pertinent, but whatever. Another rabbit trail. And you're thankful, right? So, what was the very first tactic that Satan ever used against man?
Lie.
Well, temptation, but with a lie. But was it actually a bald-faced lie?
No, there was some truth in it.
Remember what he said? Remember what Satan said? He said, God said not to eat that. Or she said, God said not to eat that. And he said, or you'll surely die. And he goes, you won't die. And she ate it and she didn't die. So was he telling the truth?
Hard.
I thought maybe he just thought it would happen and it didn't happen.
Nope. There were 2 deaths. And he was talking, it's like playing word games with people.
Spiritual death. He was talking, yeah.
So, was he lying? A lawyer would say, technically he wasn't lying because she didn't die. Adam and Eve didn't die. But they really did spiritually. They died in their spirit. And that's why his lie was so effective. Because he took the best lies, and I said this in another class, it sounds funny to say the best lies because there are no good lies. The most effective lie is one that has truth with a little twist to make it a lie. Because it's so much more likely to get people hooked. If you think about scams that get people hooked, they bait people with something that's doable. I had a friend in high school, and when I went on to college, he would always update me, and I never could figure this out because he was a smart guy. He wanted to be an architect. But he just couldn't get this, and he would always, this is back in the days, this would have been the 80s, where we didn't have the internet, so you didn't have the Nigerian princess sending the emails, but he would get all these things. They used to send these things that would say like, hey, there's 3 possible prizes. All you have to do is send this in, and you will guarantee to win one of these prizes. And he'd go, okay, I want to figure this out. And he'd look at it and say, A vacation to the Bahamas. Pretty good. Second thing be a new car. Wow, I could go do those. Third one be a 35 millimeter camera. Well, technically, 35 millimeter cameras, anything that takes pictures that you put 35 millimeter film in. He's like, there's no way I can lose. I I know I'm going to get the least of these, so I'm going to get the camera. So I looked up what a camera's worth. The camera's like 150 bucks. So I've got this in the bag. So he'd send in whatever. I said, how'd that work out for you? I'd come back later. How'd that work out for you? He goes, oh, they sent me the camera. And I said, well, good. So you're up 150 bucks. No, why not? Well, because it was like this little piece of cardboard with a little plastic lens on it and whatever. And I said, how many times are you going to have to do this? You fall for these stupid things all the time. And for years, he fell for the same things over and over and over and over. But we see people do that today all the time. I was getting a Coke at the convenience store earlier and put the 2 Cokes up there, one for me, one for her. The lady looked at me and she goes, is that all? I said, yeah. She goes, you're not going to buy a Powerball? I said, no, I want to keep my money, thanks. And she just looked at me really weird. Anyway, I'm not on anybody's case about the lottery, but it's like, really? When I see something as however many billions to one, you may as well, I'd have more fun lighting it and watching it burn. Even if it was 1 in 100, I still wouldn't win. So, anyway, again, I digress. So, but yet, Satan hooks people all the time. Think about it. Say you got a married couple, okay? Happily married. And this is my pet peeve, Portia's heard this one before. I hate the way Hollywood portrays marriages, or not marriages, relationships. Because they're all romanticized. And it's like, really? They show these people, they wake up in the morning and the woman's makeup is all on, it's perfect. And my wife looks good no matter what when she wakes up, so don't get me wrong. Nothing to do with her. But you know, their hair's all perfect. And you're like, really? Come on, I know what it's like when you sleep all night and you sleep on, you got the drool. That's not reality. And then they kiss each other and they just, oh, honey, sweetie pie, you're just so wonderful. Well, so when reality hits, and you got kids crying, and you got a baby crying in the night, and you both turn back to each other and pray, pretend I'm going to sleep. Maybe they'll do it. And I know that one hits home because I know everybody's done that one. It's like, maybe he thinks I'm asleep, he'll go change the baby because I don't want to go deal with it. So, except me, because I only did 3 things wrong in my life right here.
Yeah.
And they were all before I met you.
Right.
Well, you're lucky. You're blessed.
Every day.
That was an example of one of those lies I was just talking about. So, anyway, they romanticize all this, and then they get into this relationship, and it's like, you know what? Life is just not fun today. He's being a jerk, or she's being obnoxious, or I don't understand how she thinks. That makes no sense. Or what was he thinking? What kind of a man mind is he? Where's he coming from? So you get in these situations, and it's just not. It's just kind of disappointing. Right? It's not everything that I expected, hoped, and dreamed, and it's not like what they showed on the movies on TV. And then you go to work, and then you meet this other person, and when you see them, they're all dressed. They got up. They look just like your wife or husband did this morning, but they brushed their teeth and they combed their hair and took a shower, got all dressed up, looked nice, put on their makeup, and they're putting their best foot forward. And then you see this person, you're like, now why couldn't I have something like that? Now I would never cheat on my wife. Don't get me wrong. No, I really wouldn't. But this is just play acting. I would never do that. But you know, sometimes it's just nice to have somebody. And she's always so sweet. She never gripes at me. She never says anything about not taking the trash out or getting dishes and. You know, she's just really kind of sweet. Maybe I like to spend a little time with her just to get to know her, right? What's the harm in that? I mean, I'm married, we're fine, it's whatever, but it's nice to be appreciated for a change. So you start spending a little time, and you start appreciating one another. But it's like that dating stage where everything is always perfect, you know, you don't ever see the other side of somebody. So that starts going on. Pretty soon the grass starts looking a little bit greener over here, a little bit browner over here. And it doesn't happen overnight, but over a period of weeks and months and maybe longer, all of a sudden you start developing this bond with this woman over here, and all of a sudden you look at your wife and, you know what, you're nothing like her. You know, I don't know what happened. When I first met you, you were just wonderful, and you just down tubes. I don't know what happened. Right? It's all fictional, right? So, because I want to keep my marriage, so I'm making sure my wife understands it's all fictional. And before you know it, they say there's an emotional affair that always happens before a physical affair. So then, all of a sudden they break off. And I heard something on the radio the other day, and I thought that was fascinating, and I thought, you know what, when times get hard in your marriage, it's like putting you through the fire, and if you can withstand that and make it through to the other side, you're going to have something so much better, such a more rich relationship than what you're ever going to get when you went over to this other lawn over here. I thought, wow, that's amazing. But yet there are people who will go from yard to yard, and as soon as the grass isn't quite like they wanted, they go to the next one. They don't ever catch on. The whole time, it's Satan and demons just showing you like, hey, did you see her over here? Look. Oh, and look how nice she is. Remember, you know what your wife did to you this morning? Remember how that, and she didn't even cook you breakfast. I bet that one would cook you breakfast. Just on and on and on. So, fortunately, I have 2 guys in my office I work with, so we're just fine. Yes?
Mom once told me, if the grass looks greener on the other side, it's probably because it's over the septic tank.
That is a true statement. That is interesting.
That was good.
There used to be a saying, they just didn't realize they had to mow that green grass if they went to.
I've heard that one too. Yeah.
The grass is always
Grass was
greener
greener, so you
unless
have to mow it. And then you're like, oh my goodness, who fertilized that? So, since you're newlywed, that was all just a little. So, you know, it's just every little part of our life, there's some spirit out there that's just talking and yapping at you and carrying on and telling you this and that, trying to get you to do wrong things, trying to get you down a path, all based on a lie, okay? And if it's a lie that's a truth with a twist to it, that's even better. Look at some of the most successful cults, if you will, Christian cults, I guess people call them. You take Mormonism, for example. It's very close to Christianity. If you look at it, it looks like most people that are Mormons think they're going to a Christian church. I don't know if you guys realize this or not. You know they're called Latter-day Saints. You know they've changed their name. Now if you see their churches, it'll be a Community of Christ church. So if you see Community of Christ, it's Latter-day Saints or Reformed, whatever it's called, Latter-day Saints, or LDS. I didn't know that, but I got a good friend who used to be in that. So there's just a lot of things just a lot of misrepresentations. You talk to them, Jehovah's Witnesses, they can talk our language. They'll talk about grace, they'll talk about mercy, love, Jesus, and you'll think they're talking about the same thing you are. If you say, is Jesus God's son? And they'll say, yes. And you're like, well, there you go, they're just like us. But if you talked a little further, you'd say, oh, what? Oh, you mean he's one of God's sons? God has other sons? Really? Like Mormons? Did you know Jesus and Satan are half brothers? That's what the Mormons believe. I know, it sounds crazy. But you don't see that out front. That's not out on the sign for the church. Come worship with us where Jesus and Satan are half brothers. You don't see that on there.